Okay.
Especially if you had Michael, it's not going to be here.
You know, we didn't put him on the because on the 5th, we went to the end of the park and we saw the Savannah Bananas play. Have you heard about that? It's like the Harvard Field Farmers for baseball. It was an experience. My son said it's the most fun he's ever had at a baseball game.
We're not right on the water.
Hi, Michael, it's Aaron. Just checking to see if you're in the room. Awesome. Okay, great. Seeing you. I'm right here. I'm in order. Are you coming in through the playground there? Oh, door to the parking lot. That's open. He's walking in the community entrance.
Okay, we'll do the pledge of allegiance. All set, everyone? Good evening and welcome. I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Hampton-Wilbraham Regional School District. I'll begin by calling the roll in alphabetical order. Michelle Boudreau,
Here. Here.
Cheryl Caruana,
Here.
Tim Collins, present. Sean Kennedy,
Here.
Lisa Murray,
Here.
Michael Terabasi, and Rich Rediker.
Here.
Okay, I would ask Doug to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the reorganization meeting of the school committee, and the first order of business is the election of the chair. We will begin with nominations and then statements by the candidates, and then we'll proceed to select the chair via paper ballot. So at this time, I'll open the floor to any nominations for chair.
I nominate Michelle.
I'll nominate Sean.
Are there any other nominations? Okay. That being the case, I'll close the floor to nominations, and we'll next hear statements from the candidates. I'd invite Michelle Boudreau to make any statements she'd like to make prior to the vote.
Thank you. Well, it's been a privilege to serve as the chair over the last few years, and I'm proud of the steady, forward-moving leadership I have brought to this role. As a committee, we've taken on important work and made meaningful progress, always grounded in the direction and consensus of the full group. Throughout my time as chair, I focused on running productive, respectful meetings, upholding the responsibilities of the school committee as outlined in Mass General Law and applicable laws, and strengthening communication and collaboration with both of our member towns. And when navigating complex issues around budget, policy, and district planning, I've aimed to create space for thoughtful dialogue, informed decision-making, and clear focus on what serves our students, educators, and district. My approach has always been to support the committee's work, not to advance any personal agenda, and to help ensure that our process remains focused, respectful, and transparent. If the committee believes continued consistency and steady leadership would be beneficial, I'd welcome the opportunity to serve as the chair again.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Kennedy.
I've been the vice chair for a few years now, and I've appreciated the honor of being the vice chair. I've been talking for a while about maybe becoming chair. I want to try to do things a little different. Right now, we have some of the different committees from like FinCom and some select boards in Wilbraham and Hamden that say that they don't trust us. And I've been trying to think of it, why is it that they don't trust us? And I know that we've been doing things the same way since before I was on the school committee, where we would have the subcommittees and we have our subcommittee meetings and such. But we tried something a little different, and when it came for the finance subcommittee, what we started doing was we started going to the FinCom meetings and the advisory meetings and such, where we took the school committee to them. And I'm thinking that's where I'd really like to take this committee, whether I'm chair or not. I think it's something we should really consider doing, where we should have a representative from the school committee at every FinCom meeting, at every advisory meeting, at all the select board meetings, and then maybe capital, because if you remember, capital said, oh, you didn't go through the process, we didn't agree to anything. And the interesting thing was, we weren't actually at the meeting because we did it via television. If you remember, Michelle, we did it via TV, remotely, even though we could have been there. It was just, we just wanted to be there on time. And maybe if we were there, we were there to listen. And yes, they're not going to talk about school committee stuff every single time, but to be there to hear what's going on in all these different departments so we know what we're up against. And you can even take it to maybe, CPAC and different PTOs where we go around, and it doesn't have to be one person. We can, rotate in as our schedules fit. Yes, we're going to have our subcommittee meetings, but as a way of more bringing them out to Muhammad, rather than expecting them to come to us. They come to us, it's our meeting, they sit there, whatever. But when we're at their meetings, then you can have conversations before, you have conversations afterwards, and you gain some trust to get to know us all a little bit more when you go to these meetings. And I just think that might be a really good direction for us to go. I believe in the management style, and this would be a management role, the chair, that you are the servant of the committee, right? Whatever anyone wants to talk about, whatever anyone wants to do, I'm making sure it gets on the agenda, I like debate, I like conversation, but again, as the chair, I would be more in a management role, just making sure that what we all want brought us gets brought up. What we all want to happen happens. And to have some real conversations with people, and hopefully get more people to come to meetings. Whether we have to offer, maybe if we can offer babysitting, so you can come, you can bring your kids, and you can have, babysitting before not babysitting, childcare, but and do things like that, just more to open our doors as we go when we open other doors. I do not have a personal agenda. I think we are all, and this is the first time I've experienced it, we're all pretty much aligned on that we want what's best for the kids and how that is to happen. It's a little frustrating with the regional agreement, and the planning committee and stuff like that, and the towns not necessarily. I think that they see eye to eye. I just think that they're looking at it from a different point of view. And I'm hoping that we can bring them together and really have these difficult conversations, with each other. Those are my reasons. Those are what I'd like to do. Those are my plans. If you have any questions, please just let me know. And by the way, the reason I don't have it written out and to you is because I want it to be a consensus. Like, here's what my plan is. Would you like that? Oh, we like that, but we don't think we should do this, we should do that, whatever, and we all work it out as a team. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'd ask Josh to distribute the ballots. If you could make your selections known by writing the candidate of your preference on the ballot, and then Josh will collect them as well.
Do we need more than one? Tim, you? Yeah, Tim and I both.
There are 5 votes for Michelle Boudreau, 2 votes for Sean Kennedy. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you. So we will move forward with the election of the vice chair for nominations.
Nominate Sean again.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, so we will close nominations for vice chair. So this is also done by secret ballot, and Josh will be handing out those ballots. So nominations is for Sean or Mike. Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
I actually don't want to give one, but
Well, then, why don't you say a few words?
When I ran to be on the committee, it was to serve the kids. If the committee wants me to do this, I'm going to. But I'm not that person desire. There you go.
Thank you. Sean, are we comfortable to speak? Well, yeah, that's Sean.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, the same passion I have to be chair. I think vice chair is important for when Michelle's not around, but also to maybe some of these ideas that I have are something that we might be interested in doing and like to play leadership on that. So thank you. Everything that Mike and I both do on the committee, we do with passion.
Thank you. So I can tell her ballot. Rossi has 4 votes, and Sean Kennedy 3. So Mike Rossi will be the vice chair of the school committee. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Mike.
So now we'll move on to the election of the secretary. So I open the floor for nominations for the secretary.
She really does a good job. She does a good job. She might hate me, but I can't not nominate Lisa.
Second.
It's not my fault.
Are there any other nominations for secretary? Okay, so we can vote. All in favor of Lisa Murray being secretary?
Oh, it doesn't need to be ballot? All in
No.
favor?
Okay. And looks like nobody's opposed, so congratulations.
Lisa's against.
6 to 1.
Congratulations. Are you actually opposed for the official record?
Okay, for the official record, no.
Okay, so Lisa Murray from 7 to 0 is the secretary this year. So now we'll move on to the election of the treasurer. So we'll open nominations for treasurer.
Isn't that?
That's Sabrina.
That's
right?
Sabrina.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we will vote on Sabrina. Okay. So we'll do all in favor for Sabrina Loftus.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, so congratulations to Sabrina, 7 to 0. So now we will move on to the subcommittee assignments. So everyone in your packet, you have the list of the subcommittees in the background. Okay, so we'll go through how many seats or how many positions are available for each of these. So we already have Doug as for audit, so that's the initial review of the annual audit. They make recommendations to the school committee on acceptance and directions. Typically meetings are in February, they have 1 or 2, so that will be Doug. So next we move on to the finance and operations. They are responsible for recommending directions, strategies, and priorities to the full school committee. Initial review of annual school budget. Works closely with town boards to discuss HWRC assessment. Meetings typically begin, as the committee feels appropriate. Sometimes they begin as early as September, but typically November to May. And there's frequent meetings between December and April. This committee also is including technology, which is responsible for recommending direction, strategies, and action plans surrounding district technology planning and development. So it's really finance, operations, and technology. So who's interested in being on the subcommittee? So,
I've served on it previously. I'm happy to serve on the finance subcommittee. I have a history with FinCom to disclose to members of the committee that may not know. I sat on FinCom for 1 year. I think that's helpful.
anyone else?
I've served for 9 years. And if you want me to continue, great. No, that's fine.
So typically it's 2 from Wilbraham and 1 from Hampton. So you can still, if you're interested, you can still elect to be on it. Okay, and whoever from Wilbraham, if you're not selected, you can certainly be the alternate for the members. So Rich, are you interested in being on finance?
I know that's going to be that time commitment there. Policy worked out well. I love it. I like to reach out. Obviously, you like to split things up. Sure, just don't know my time commitments well.
Okay.
I can't see the little numbers, but I just don't see the small.
So are you interested in being on it, or?
Description of the.
Not particularly, but again, I'll do a review if we have to.
Okay, so I will have you to be on finance. Okay, so we have Mike, Sean, and Tim that are interested. So, let's see.
I'll step down and make it easy.
Okay, now you're voting. Okay. Do you two want to work it out for a minute?
Huh?
So you're both saying that you'd both be willing to be the alternate, is what I'm hearing from Sean and Tim?
Yeah.
whichever way it goes.
Okay,
If we do meet again.
yeah.
Well, I think that's the only committee that we try and have a Hampton representative, but it wasn't always that way in the 90s. I'll stay on the committee.
Okay, so Tim, you'll be
Oh,
the, okay. Okay, so the Finance Operations Technology Subcommittee will be Mike, Sean, and myself, and Tim as the alternate.
Thank you.
Curriculum Subcommittee provides initial review and recommendation on the new or substantially revised curriculum. Reviews reports from the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Professional Learning on the status of curriculum development and changes that are to be implemented in previously approved curricula. Meetings are as needed.
That would be interesting, that's what we want.
Okay. Tim?
I do it again.
Okay, so we have, Rich, are you interested?
I mean, I'm happy. I think I was on it this past time.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Whenever Lisa asks me to come, I come. So.
Do you want to be on it, or would you like to serve as an alternate?
I'm happy to do whatever you say.
It's your choice. It's your time.
Meetings weren't that much, so I'll say yes.
Okay, so we have Cheryl, Tim, Lisa, and Rich that are interested. Would you like to say any? Because so the committee is 3, and then an alternate.
I'll be on.
Okay, Tim, you're being so gracious this evening. Thank you. Okay, so we have Cheryl, Rich, and Lisa for the curriculum with Tim as an alternate. Okay, so we have the LPBEC Collaborative Representative. As a member of the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative, HWRSD works with neighboring districts in development and operation of high-quality, cost-effective education-related services in the areas including special education, vocational technical education programs, and transportation. The school committee representative reviews the LPBEC strategic goals, the LPBEC budget, and the associated assessment to HWRSD. Those meetings are monthly in person at LPBEC in West Springfield.
I'll just say that we reorganized last meeting and I'm the vice chair. So I'd like to say,
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so Lisa will be our collaborative representative. So now we have the LPBEC Corporation representative. The Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Corporation was organized in 1981 and is a separate organizational entity from the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative. The corporation has a separate board of directors holding separate meetings and generally maintaining a separate financial system. The current utilization of the LPBEC is the holding of the title to real estate to be used for educational purposes by the LPBEC and for the member school districts. Those meetings are monthly. I think those ones are remote, or are they in person?
they're in person,
They're in
but
person.
it's only like 3 times a year. And sometimes we have joint meetings. So whoever does it gets to eat with me during the day.
I was in that role last year. I'm willing to do it again. I will disclose to the committee. I think I only actually made it to one of the meetings. But in the absence of anyone else willing to do it, I'm guessing that's considered sufficient.
I'd like to share that with you because I know that I can make all the meetings. I was on this 2 years ago and I enjoyed it. So
Do we have go?
You can't tag team it.
okay.
No, that's why there's no alternate for LP, for
But
my
if you want to do it,
position.
Cheryl, I'm like, yeah.
Like I said, I'd like to do it next year.
It's just 3 meetings for the whole year, Sheila.
I have some issues with cars,
Yeah.
so I don't have a problem.
Okay.
So I'll
Looks
go
like Mike is
and I'll tell you about the drama
Okay.
after.
Okay, so if no one else, so Mike will be the
Yeah.
corporation representative. Okay, so we have the MASC, MASS conference rep, represents the school committee at the annual fall conference, to vote on the resolutions brought before the members. All school committee members can attend the conference.
I nominate Sean.
I can do it again, I'm going this year.
Okay, so Sean will be the MASC, MASS conference rep. Negotiations, responsible for developing and recommending negotiation strategy for unionized staff. The meetings are frequently and weekly, usually during negotiations, which we are currently involved in now. So that will remain the same. Tim, Sean, and I, think it's good to stay the same or
Correct.
change?
You don't have to.
Okay. Is anyone else interested in being on negotiations?
I guess I have interest in negotiations, but I'm not sure we have the prerogative to change that around.
I can step down if you want, and you can take over.
I guess I would say that I don't think there's any prohibition against changing, although there may be some practical reasons why maintaining stability would be advantageous.
Yeah, I agree with that. Keep it the same.
Since they got a crowd around the table, if Mike wants to participate, why couldn't we have one extra person?
We'd have to want.
He can come, but he wouldn't be able to speak.
Is that,
Mike could attend, but he wouldn't be able to speak.
So if 4 of us were there and we all said we agreed on something, then that's a quorum, and that means the whole school committee.
well, I know, but I attend meetings and don't vote.
So you can not speak at all, you can just observe.
Okay.
But we also have executive session and we debrief the entire committee and have full discussions during those.
Well, I mean, Tim goes to meetings in the seats. I couldn't, like to.
Well, it's, if we're voting and if there's a quorum. So there's one thing about asking a question or when we're not doing any sort of deliberation. So typically when we're in negotiations, we're doing some sort of deliberating, typically.
Yeah, it'd have to be a posted school committee.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will remain with Sean, Tim, and myself on negotiations. Policy manual, policy subcommittee, provides initial review and makes recommendations on new policies. Responsible for ongoing review and revision of the HWRC policy manual. The meetings are as needed.
Correct. This year we did not need as many meetings as last year.
Mike was a great leader, I'm happy to serve under him.
I'm happy to continue to serve. And then when we have our first meeting, we'll coordinate.
Who else is interested in being on policy?
I volunteered.
Sylvia Rich. Tim?
Yeah, sure.
And Mike, are you interested?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure, I'm sorry.
Yes, I said I'm really interested.
Oh, perfect, okay. And alternate?
I'll be an alternate.
Okay, so we already have Doug and Christina as our Scantic Valley Regional Health Trust representatives. I'm responsible for representing the district as an alternate to the primary board member, which is the Assistant Superintendent for Business, in joint negotiations and purchase of health and life insurance coverages. So those meetings occur monthly during the school year, so thank you for serving. And then we have the Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee. So responsible for ensuring the fair and timely biannual evaluation of the HWRSB superintendent. Makes recommendations to the full school committee on annual summative evaluation. So typically, we're going into year 2 of the goals for the superintendent. So towards the end of the year, everybody will fill out an evaluation for the superintendent. So what this committee does then reviews the results from the evaluation and comes up with collectively with a summative report. And then presents it to the school committee. The school committee does discuss it, and then we agree on whether or not we want to move forward with that or any changes, and then that's what becomes the superintendent's evaluation. So I will be on that.
How many are supposed to be on it?
3. do one more. Okay. So that's myself, Mike, and Cheryl. Okay, so that's everything. Thank you. Sure. So finance will be Mike, Sean, and myself, and Tim is the alternate. So just when we have this for our next meeting, we'll just review it to make sure that it's correct, so that everybody is aware of what their subcommittees are. Okay, and then the next is going over the school committee meeting schedule. Let's see it. All right, so the next school committee meeting we have listed is Thursday, August 21st. That works for everybody? Sean, you're okay with that?
Yeah, whatever you guys decide.
I am not okay. I am not on call, I'm good.
Everybody's, does that work for you? Okay.
I mean, if you still have a quorum, it doesn't matter.
So I'll bring up a question. Do we need to have that meeting in August? Are we anticipating having a huge list of things that would be a decision? Is something.
I will point out that this meeting that we're in right now is solely for elected representatives, yet we have an agenda. So I would probably say we need something on this.
That day, I don't know by Zoom on that day.
I don't think it's hard to say now what will be on that agenda. There are a few items. So in years past, I know we have had more frequent meetings during the summer, so this is an abbreviated meeting schedule.
I think it's important to say this meeting because we don't know what's happening on the federal level. And we are going to have to plan if craziness continues.
So we'll move forward with that day. So September, just so you're aware, is the schedule will look a little bit different because of everything that happens at the beginning of the school year with back to school nights and open houses. So we have a meeting, the first meeting will be Wednesday, September 10th, the second being Thursday, September 25th. So next, and then it kind of follows suit to our normal schedule, barring any holidays. Oh yeah, and then so February, you'll note that February 4th will be a Wednesday, and then we'll meet again Thursday, February 26th. March is also a busy month for school committee with the budget and budget hearings. So there will be 3 meetings in March, all on Thursdays, and then the rest follow suit. And then May, there's we have the first meeting Thursday, May 7th, and the second is Wednesday, May 20th. And then in June, again, another busy month will be Thursday, June 11th. And we'll try to coincide that with the retirement celebration. And then as always, if meetings need to be added, we'll do that at the convenience of the rest of the members.
On the August 21st, when next week's no good, because that's the start of school.
Yeah.
Like Monday and stuff.
Just so you know, the September 25th meeting, I won't be in person. I have to look at my flights. I might not be able to attend at all, but just fine.
Okay. All right, if anything comes up, just let us know. So next we'll move on to new business. So the request to engage in consulting. So Josh Wilson.
Thank you. In your packet, you have a copy of the letter that I shared with Dr. Provost in early June, as well as a copy of school committee policy CDHCBD, which is titled consulting. The gist of my letter is to request your permission to engage in occasional educational consulting activities outside of my contractual work hours, so that would be nights, weekends, vacations, etc. I don't anticipate that there would be a large number of activities that I would be engaging in, but I would like your permission to do so. They may be the creation of asynchronous online courses, the development of written resources or documents, composition of blog posts, offering professional development, virtually or in person. I did include in the rare instance that perhaps there's an activity that takes place while students are in session, to request your permission to use up to 2 of my 3 personal days to engage in those activities. And of course, I would coordinate that with Dr. Provost prior to agreeing to doing anything while students are in session. And I also just wanted to share that being mindful of any potential conflict of interest, that I would not engage in any activities with families who are enrolled in the district or involved with any students. And my top priority continues to remain the success of our faculty, students, and staff. When I spoke with Dr. Provost, he shared that he would be supportive of my request, and so I ask your permission to engage in those activities. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
If I may, I do have a couple. Do you have a history of consulting as you were foreseeing it at previous jobs?
So I was an assistive technology consultant a number of years ago, and I engaged as independent contractor, so I wasn't serving as a director at that point in time. I do participate in regular conferences and have given national presentations years ago. And I've engaged in some development of resources like my IEP guide and those types of things, but it's with the demands of this particular role, I don't, like it's an occasional once or twice a year. Because
Does that mean like consulting, that it's conferences and stuff that want you to speak or present? Or is that you doing private work with families from other districts or?
So I anticipate that it will primarily be, so it would just be me working for myself, really. And it would be primarily the development of professional development or classes or resources. There may be an occasional time where I work with a particular family in terms of like reviewing an IEP or an evaluation and giving feedback, but I do not anticipate engaging in any sort of day-to-day student-facing activities with other districts, if that makes sense.
As our district is a needs improvement district with special ed, what do you think that this would do to your focus?
So we're currently needs assistance. Yep, no, that's okay. For our overall rating by the department, mostly because of our tier focus monitoring compliance issues that we engaged with last year, which I talked about. So we had 6 total areas of non-compliance or partial compliance that were found, and those will fall off this upcoming cycle. And we're only 2 points away from meeting needs requirements. And so my hope would be that we will fall into that for our rating for next school year. And I would say that my top priority is here, and so if I'm not able to do anything, that's completely fine with me. It's not something that I'm sort of eager to jump out and do and shift my priorities. It's just something that I would like the ability to do should something present itself. And I have absolute confidence that Dr. Provost would say now is not the time for me to be able to do something like that, and I would absolutely respect that.
Joshua?
It's already on. When the green light's on.
What I wanted to find out is that whatever you develop, let's say it's novels, could you see yourself copyrighting it and using it in other districts? Maybe not you yourself, but at least you could.
I could, but I would also say that I feel like special ed is one of the most collaborative sort of disciplines, and so I feel like sharing resources freely is important, but there could be a time where that may happen.
Any other?
Sure, I just wanted to speak my reasons of supporting this. I think it's important for you to have a little bit of a sense of the work ethic that Josh brings to his job. It is amazing. You know, when we worked together in Northampton, it was frequently Friday night, 8:30, 9 p.m. The rest of the city was gone. There was a light on in my office. There was a light on in his office, and we'd yell at each other to go home. Gained a little bit more maturity, so I'm getting out a little bit earlier, but I'm still frequently driving him out of his office at the end of the day so that he can go home. So I have absolutely no concern about his ability to, his commitment to this job and this taking anything away from it. I can share as someone who has taught at the college level, someone who's presented at other conferences, someone who's done evaluations for other districts while being in the special ed director role and being in the superintendent role. I think it sharpens the pencil. You know, when you have to prepare yourself to present at that level, you learn things and you prepare things, and I think our district would be the beneficiary of that. I think when Josh entered our district, he had just developed a training on the new IEP that he had given to the Western Massachusetts Special Education Director Group that other people paid to send their people to, but then he gave that same training to all of our staff as part of his role. So I think it's only benefits, and certainly I will continue to monitor Josh, and if I think he's taking on too much, I will continue to try to shut him down when appropriate.
See, that's the thing. I mean, if there's that symbiotic, you know, agreement between the two of you, that's great. But what if you say, "Hey, I don't want you to do this," and he's like, "Well, I do want you to do it." You know, and also, you right now, you just said that you are forcing him to leave. He is staying too late with the present workload. So adding more work, what is that going to do to our esteemed colleague here?
Right. So I also just heard him say, if John says no, the answer is no. And I've known that to be the case too. I've never had any kind of issue with any sort of non-compliance or insubordination. Josh is always
I'm not
following
saying
my
insubordination was not what I was saying. I was saying that this is your private time, this is your time when you're not there. And if we give you the green light to do consulting, and you get a consulting gig, and John thinks, "Hey, you know, I don't see you here at, you know, late anymore, and whatever, let's pull back from that." And you're like, "No, it's very lucrative for me. I'm doing really well, and I'm enjoying it." And so what happens if something, and I'm not saying that you two do not have a professional relationship and agreement and respect for each other, but I'm saying, you know, if Josh takes off in this consulting, you know, and I can only imagine that you would, because you're amazing, what happens?
Maybe it might help Josh to allay concerns. Like, do you have an estimate as to how many hours per month or week might be devoted to these activities?
Sure. So I anticipate that in terms of like professional development, I would say maybe 2 sessions a year. Like, I'm not looking to do something drastic or huge. I do think that what sort of fills my bucket, which is in part why I did it last summer, is sort of developing that professional development activities that I can share with colleagues and learn from other districts. And so I do think that that's helpful. I think that reviewing an IEP or evaluation from another district can give me insight into the same sort of feedback that I review with ours. Like, here are things that I think we should do differently. Here are things that I think, you know, we could replicate. But I'm not anticipating it being a regular thing. I would say that like a weekly blog post or something along those lines may be there, but I'm not anticipating spending a significant amount of time each month sort of in these activities. And that's in part why I was mindful of adding the request for 2 personal days. out of all of my paid time off, because I want to have there be a limit, because I just think that's responsible.
So when you say 2 sessions, you mean an hour lecture, or you're running a day-long seminar?
Could be, I guess it could be either or. I'm anticipating like a total of, so if it was an all-day seminar, then it would be a total of 16 hours over the course of an entire year. Or it could be 2 half-day sessions. So like 6 hours.
And a weekly log is not going to cost you more than an hour a week.
Right.
I think we've come out so far ahead in this that in return for all the extra time and effort that Josh Williams gives to us, allowing him to do this is just a minor, getting back something the other direction. So I'm all for it. And not that he would do this. I remember a guy I taught with, he stayed till 5 o'clock every single day, all the kids. He wasn't always on time in the morning. He got up for a few minutes late. And they cracked down on the morning, and then he started leaving at 3 o'clock every day. So the school lost out. By sitting there cracking down at one end, they lost out way more time at the other end. So I think in terms of, again, he gives us so much, I think we owe this just a little bit in return, so.
I would also like just to add that, from what I'm hearing is that he's not looking to have another full-time position. This is just something based on our policy, the CBD consulting. Administrators in the district should recognize that their primary responsibility is to the education of the students within the district, and they engage in consulting or other educational activities only with the permission of the superintendent, who will consult with the committee. And that is why he's bringing this forward. But and he very clearly stated that this was not to interfere with his duties as a director of student services. And it sounds like he has the blessing of the superintendent. He's not looking to have this take over, and he's not looking to launch a business on the side that then he can leave us to be the master consultant in your, So, I think I also support, this venture, and I think it sounds like you really know your limitations, and you're just asking for permission for when it comes up, because that is per our policy, and that's what we require. So thank you for following the policy.
Yeah, and it's been my experience when I had functioned as a consultant in my previous life as a union leader, that the work and the preparation you put into it, but you always come away learning as much as you taught. If you've got a good group in front of you, they're going to give as much to you as you give to them. And so I view it as a learning experience, and it's been spelled out in a way that I don't have any worries about it interfering with your work here. So I think it's a good idea.
The school committee did have this come up a couple of years ago, where we did have an administrator that did ask for the same permissions, which was also discussed. So this is not the first time that this has been requested of us.
Let me make it clear, I'm not saying that you wouldn't do your job here. I'm just saying you're so amazing, I can't imagine you do something and have it not explode or something giant. So, just because you're great, that's all. That's why I asked those questions. I thought that was important.
The balloons just go.
He does get to pick and choose what he's consulting about, though. So in ESL world, there is a lot of consulting, and I have consulted, and I'm friends with other people that are consultants, and you can choose what you're consulting on, if it's something that you can do or not do. So I'm 100% for it. Some of the best conversations I've had is with other people in other districts, and seeing what they're doing and trying to enhance that, and then bringing what they have to my district. So I'm 100% for it.
I'm in support of this.
Okay, so why don't we have a vote? So why don't we do we have a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay. So we'll do all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Did you need a second?
Second.
Okay, so we will continue with the preparation for delay or denial of federal funding.
So as there was some email correspondence last week relative to this topic. Although the Congress legislature has approved funding for some of the entitlement grants, there has been a recommendation by the executive branch to withhold some of that funding. For our district, the impact would be about $71,000 worth of impact. We use that funding for supporting an instructional coach, part of the salary of an instructional coach. We use some for covering some of the mentoring of our new staff. And then for the Title IV money, Title II is, Title IIA is for teacher improvement. Title IV, I'm drawing a blank on what it is, but we'll get back to that. But it's a small amount, so we shifted it into Title I. That's an allowable use, and so we use it to support intervention work. So our Title I intervention work is bolstered by this small amount of Title IV money. Like I said, it's about $71,000. A couple of things that come up relative to this. We have an open instructional coaching position, which we budgeted at about that same amount of resource. So as far as just a comparable, that's a comparable amount of funding and a potential way to mitigate the impacts of this. But at the same time, I think the thing to keep in mind is this is money that has been voted and approved by Congress. For it to actually not be given to us would be a violation of that authorization of funding that the Congress, and so to change this would require Congress to take action as well. What may happen, however, is that it may be very delayed in when we might receive it, and so that will pose some challenges to us as to how we sort of compensate for that loss of revenue and the things that it supports for us as the year goes along. I think if the funding becomes available during the year, my hope is that we get some guidance from our partners at DESE relative to whether or not we could retroactively apply it back to what we intended to use it for, or whether we'll have to use it for funding from the time we receive it to the end of the school year. That's the challenge, and it has some real impact on us either way, as far as what we can do and what we can plan to do. And so it does have an impact on how we go about doing our work and what we might be possible for us to do. If we choose to leave the open position open and use that resource that was budgeted for that to then support these other activities that we normally would use this grant funding for, even if it returns, we're in a challenging position as far as the actual hiring process. To bring someone on, even if in a month from now they do that, the shorter the time window for hiring, the more challenging it is to get someone to fill that kind of position. And then likewise, if it goes into the school year and we're then allowed the money, or the money is released to us, we're equally challenged to sort of hire that position to execute the robust plans that we wanted to do relative to these coaching positions. So independent of whether we get the money or not, it's going to prove to be challenging for us, and it's going to require our curriculum instruction director to work with staff on how to approach that. Compared to other districts, we have a very modest amount of resource. There are other districts that are much more dependent upon these kinds of resources to help support their most vulnerable students. So I think there's a real ethical concern I have for all districts that are having to work their way through this. It proves a challenge for us. It's not as difficult as some other folks have it, but at the same time, it will be challenging for us. So I think that's all I'll say at this point as far as laying out kind of what are some options we have and what the impact is on us. And I think some of the more details about the how we approach working with a small amount of resources, whether it be short-term or longer-term, turn to this for that.
Thank you. So just to give you just a little background around who will be most impacted, Sewell Road and Mile Tree schools will primarily be impacted by the loss of the literacy coach position. So to ensure continued support, we plan to engage in services of Dr. Heidi Wojcik. She's a professor from Worcester State College. She's consulted with us through a few of our literacy consortium grants. So we would engage with her in a limited way to support the efforts that we've already begun. She brings valuable expertise in literacy development. She's been along this journey with us for several years, so she's a great resource for us. And we would creatively leverage our existing coaching team to meet the literacy needs of both schools. But that approach means that each elementary school will experience a strain of their reduced coaching capacity. We have worked through that this year, and we've been able to try different ways to address the need. We were without an instructional coach for the whole year. So we have a very dedicated team, and we'll work collaboratively with the building principals and the coaches to make necessary adjustments and ensure a thoughtful, strategic approach to the literacy support. Thankfully, we do have an extremely dedicated coaching team and building principals who are committed to maintaining the high-quality instruction and supporting our students' literacy growth despite the challenges, and they're committed to the coaching model. They're really our biggest champions for coaching at the elementary level. Something else I wanted to mention is the loss of the member of our elementary coaching team will also impact our grant writing efforts. You probably have heard me talk about some of the Early Literacy Consortium grant or other grants that we've received. Our instructional coaches have played a key role in applying for and securing grants that fund the high-quality instructional materials, professional development, and consultative services. With a reduced team, there'll be fewer opportunities for coaches to dedicate time to writing grant applications, which may limit access to valuable external resources that support teaching and learning. So, and this is brand new, so the important piece is getting the team together to see what makes the most sense for each school and how that could roll out and change and evolve throughout the year.
So, this is someone who works with students or works with teachers to help teachers on this?
The instructional coach is primarily in embedded professional development for teachers.
Okay. And how long has the position been open?
We posted the position this spring, had a first round of applicants, and didn't find the right match for us, and then reposted it, and I think we've received one applicant so far. So it's a position that was vacated internally by someone who moved to a different position in the district.
Doug is absolutely right that it's against the law for Congress to not spend the money that was appropriated by Congress. However, unless Congress itself steps up, or the Supreme Court, and neither seems inclined to, who knows if this money's ever going to come. So somebody has to step up and say, hey, it's against the law, but there's nobody left. So I wouldn't count on getting this thing anytime soon.
We just have to make a plan for, if we get it, great, but if we don't get it, we have a plan to make sure that we can continue to support teachers.
It also affects all the Catholic schools and private schools too, because I'm hearing a lot from them, and that's a lot of his constituents. So I don't know if they're going to do anything to change it. They're encouraging everybody to write in and get all upset about the money they get. So same place for all the schools.
Doug, do we receive Perkins money? Because Perkins money is also one of the categories that they're talking about cutting back on.
Not the one that, we do not receive Perkins money that is in the round of those reductions or withholdings. So no, that one doesn't affect us.
So the shop classes that are going on in the high school, we don't submit for some Perkins money?
So
Perkins is typically for vocational technical education, so shop class alone usually doesn't qualify for Perkins funds. It has to be a fully fledged vocational program. So the collaborative does collect some Perkins funds on behalf of all of the member districts. I haven't consulted with them to know if some of these withholdings will impact their Perkins funding, but more to come on that.
I just want to just get my head wrapped around this. So all of this past year, we did not have an instructional coach that the $71,000 would have went to pay for.
we were down one instructional coach last year, for the entire year. The position was vacated right close to the start of school, and so we waited to see what was going on to fill the position, and then as we were going through the budget conversations and thinking, do we want to hire somebody in mid-year that perhaps would not be funded for the next year? So we kind of made do and made different plans to maintain the support while we could, with the intent of applying or seeking applications again for this year, knowing that we were granted the funding to do so.
So what did we do with the $71,000 last year?
That is a good question. We used some of it to pay for the consultant who supported our literacy work last year as well.
And we did use it to support some of our, because we sort of slice the funding so we don't fully support a given position from a grant like this. So this grant, these grants, supported a couple different people as a fraction of their total compensation. So that's a piece of it as well. So it was leveraged to support 2 different staff, plus then the stipends for some of our mentoring in the course of last year. But if it's wholly removed, then those folks that are still with us that were partially supported last year now need to be fully supported via appropriation, and therefore the gap has to be closed some other way. And having an open position that parallels in size the totality of the withholding, and that's a sort of straightforward match of loss of resource to a position or a place in the budget.
But I say not only is comparable in size to the withholding, but is also similar purpose. Because Title II is professional development. This is a position that is professional development. So there is some logic to reducing a position related to professional development when the federal funding to support professional development is being reduced.
I understand the logic with what you're talking about, but, and you just said about how highly and how important these coaches are to teachers. I think at the union negotiations, if I'm not speaking out of turn, I don't know. I heard some negative things, positive things. I'm not saying specifically what I said. But we do have, some free cash here as I would suggest using this. I do not want to cut any positions. I don't want to cut any teachers, and I don't want to cut those who support our teachers. The one thing that we got from negotiations and from talking to teachers every day is that they are against the wall and they need support.
Am I correct to say that the position has been vacant, the position has not been cut, it has been posted numerous times, and you've been unsuccessful in filling the position? And we're going in so far, as of today, going into the next school year with a vacant position for this coaching position.
We are going into this year with a vacancy, and we don't have anyone to fill that position at this time. We did not post last year until we knew that we had secured the funding.
So you posted later, is that what you're saying?
We posted in the spring for this coming year.
Just to speak to Mr. Kennedy's concerns, that's one of the reasons we wanted to have this discussion tonight is because if you recall in the memo when we were contemplating cuts, that coaching position was one of the cuts that we had identified, and the school committee gave us direction to go forward and fill that. That's why we were in the process of trying to fill it. So we wanted you to hear what our thoughts were about trying to deal with. Now we have this federal cut on our hands to see if you're okay with it under these conditions, or if you wanted to send us back to look for a different plan.
So I'm not happy about the situation. I mean, I didn't vote for the orange guy. Okay, pretty sure no one in this room did. However, I think that you I think, identified, Doug, I think you've identified a good plan. You know, I might feel differently if, Lisa, you were sitting here saying, oh, we just interviewed this person and we're so stoked. You know, this other person's got great energy, it's gonna be so great. But I'm hearing that, you know, we're having trouble recruiting for the position anyway. I don't like that the teachers aren't gonna have support that I think they will probably benefit from, but you know, I think this is the beginning of what's probably gonna be several hard choices. Like, I think that this is probably nothing compared to conversations, unfortunately, we're gonna be having in the fall, and into the next budget season, which is just breaks my heart to say that, but it's just reality, unless anyone here has a checkbook and a checking account with, you know, a lot of backstop money. So I think that you did a great job. I heard the discussion. I think personally I would support not filling the position, you know, and then reconsidering if the funds become available. You know, if we get those funds, and maybe we can think about it. You know, we want to try to recruit for the position next spring. You know, when there's been recruitment time, and I think Rich is entirely correct that I think we'll probably eventually get the money, but it ain't going to be anytime soon. You know, if they go to court, it could be a year or two, you know, before it gets decided. So, and they're going to go to court. So I'm in support of leaving the position vacant, and quite clearly and publicly, you know, disclosing to everyone that this position was cut by President Trump.
Do we still have funds to support the consultant kind of budget? In our budget? Have we budgeted for that? We haven't specifically budgeted for that. We're going to have to try to scrape some money together and see how much we can afford. We applied for an early literacy consortium grant, which in the past has allowed us to include a consultant, and this year did not. So we're on our, you know, watching for some other way we can supplement her work, and she's very flexible with us. So if we say we can only afford you for a short amount of time, we usually get more than our money's worth. And I just want to say I'm not happy about not having an instructional coach, but I think part of the issue with trying to find people, we have some great potential candidates within our district. It's hard to see a position that comes up on the chopping block every so often, and the security's not there. So I don't blame people for being a little bit wary of taking a leap into something that could potentially not be a long-term position for them. So I mean, I'm not happy about it, but we all have to kind of figure out the best way to go forward in a tricky situation.
How much money did we spend last year on Heidi Wojcik?
I can't come up with that off the top of my head.
So we don't know if it was 70,000. We don't know if it
Oh,
was
no,
50,000,
definitely, no.
10,000 or 1,000.
This is a complete estimate, so I would have to go back and check but I believe we probably, for the year, paid her $20,000, I'm thinking. We had two separate contracts with her for up to a certain amount of money, and I think she didn't reach either of them.
Maybe 25 at most.
So, I mean, consultants can be, you know, great, but they can also be a crutch. They can be, instead of having a full-time person here, oh, well, we don't have that full-time person, we can use a consultant. I think our teachers deserve better than that. I think our district deserves better than that. I'm not going to go into the legality of what's happened. I just know that we have $1,120,000 roughly of federal grants coming towards us, and now that number is down to $1,049,000. So I would say until things settle out and maybe President Trump will decide to change his mind if he gets some feedback from other people, his constituents maybe. So, or if a lawsuit goes through and he, for some reason, loses, then we would get that money back. I would say, let's keep going for that position. Let's keep shooting for it. Let's not use consultants. Let's have our own people here be the consultants. If you say that there are people that are here, they're just afraid to take the position because they don't want to lose it, maybe there's some guarantees that we can offer them that if something does happen, we can, work. I just would really hate to see us. We are so bare bones as it is right now, and I just would really hate to see us go even further.
Obviously, I just, the other thing is like, where will we pull money from, right? If we look at excess and sufficiency, we cash, right? I think we were way overcommitted into our upcoming budget in E&D, right? I mean, we started out with $1 million under the pressure, primarily of FinCom. We committed additional funds, what was it, 102,000, 3,000. So, we're like 1.2 million E&D into the budget, and we're not going to have, I don't know the actual numbers, and they're not certified yet, right, Doug? But I think I remember seeing a note somewhere that we're nowhere near that ballpark probably coming into the next year, which means that without any increases, without any COLA, without any increases in health insurance, we're probably starting off the year with $750,000 budget. So,
does that $750,000 include the $400,000 that we got back from, or the $300,000 that we got back
For insurance.
for insurance?
It's not direct, but yes, is what I would say to that. I think the way in which what's remaining in E&D, for example, plus, where fiscal 25 is finishing up, the amount of E&D resources we'll have to build some into our fiscal 27 budget will be much more modest than was the case this year. So I think, whether it'll be quite as big as that, 700,000 or so, I don't know yet. I think we're still really trying to finish up with 25 and go through the process with the state around reporting and whatnot. When the finance committee starts meeting, we'll be trying to nail that down, and that'll shape some of our early conversations about how we talk to the towns and what we talk to them about and where we are. And what are those inflationary pressures, with regard to negotiations we're trying to finish up, as well as other things we will know or we'll be trying to sort of define what those increases look like, health insurance and that stuff. So, a new challenge in the coming year.
Free cash, or as we call it, E&D, or as some people call it, a rainy day fund. It's raining. I would say let's try to stay afloat and offer what we can for as long as we can. And when we have to make the really tough decisions, then we're going to make really tough decisions. But until that time, I don't think we should start picking away at little pieces of it. I think this is the system that we have. This is what's been approved. Let's make it work. Let's find somebody. That's my
I'm for keeping it vacant until we find out how much money we have. We still have educational coaches in the district, correct?
Yes, we have 3 instructional coaches.
Okay, so it's not like we're not getting instructional coaches work with teachers. Yeah, that's my opinion about that until we can find out how much money we actually have. We still have coaches. I wouldn't apply for it if I was going to apply for it. I actually wouldn't because of the funding and worrying about if I would have that position the next year. So it also matters like who applies and the quality of the people who apply. And I'm not saying anything about anybody who did apply, but again, you're not getting a huge pool of people to choose from because And it's not just in this district, it's other districts too, it's instructional coaches everywhere. Because we want to fund forward teachers that are working with students, right? We want forward-facing student teaching. And so I'm happy with that we still have the 3 instructional coaches that we do have. I'm really happy about that. I'm just, the iffiness about the funding and again, I don't, like, a lot of people wouldn't apply because of the funding.
Lisa, you commented that we have some people internally that might have a talent set that might go towards this. Can we internally, like, maybe try to free up a little bit of time for these people without them leaving their current position
Like
to
stipends?
not pay just within their current hours and responsibilities, but find a way to free up some of their time to mentor or coach. I know teachers busy every second of the day, so it's probably not very realistic, but
Yeah, they are definitely super busy throughout the day. Some of the people that I could see stepping into the role of an instructional coach are teacher leaders at their building, so they're supporting curriculum planning time, they're supporting the principals, so they're already doing some of that type of work. It just, they're not free to provide the level of intense coaching because they have their own teaching responsibilities. So, and I talked to a lot of different people who I thought, yeah, this might be a neat thing for you to do. This is, you're a teacher leader. If this could be a natural next step, and it's, people have to know when it's the right time for them to make a change if they're going to do it.
So I think what we're actually talking about here, if I am correct, is $46,000. Because we spent $25,000 approximately, that's the number I'm using here, of the $71,000 for the consultant. So we're really just talking about $46,000 that we would have to come up with, right? And not have a consultant and then have a full-time person.
It's 71 plus benefits, correct?
Yeah, it would be, yes. And the thing is, the amount we spent in the current year on consulting was, there were other sources, grants that we used for that purpose. So it's not quite apples to apples, I guess would be the way to say it. So it really is the full sort of amount, I think, is the way to think of it. If we were to bring in a consultant to that level, that 25, we're going to have to find from other sources, even in the current year. So it's the challenge will be to, can we find, and something like that where we can control how much of it we do, we may make those choices based on, we hired this position and this person is less than what we budgeted, there's 5,000 we can use, maybe that sort of picking throughout the year to sort of find the resource to have them come and do that consulting work, which is part of the struggle because it's not as consistent or as programmatic and as robust as we have if we had staff full time or if we had a block of dedicated funding for that consultant to be on a regular schedule, so I think we'll be a little more ad hoc in how we have to approach that, which is part of the conversation we had today around this were about the struggles around some of that instability in that.
So what I'm hearing from the committee is we're looking for direction on this, is that nobody is happy about the reduction in federal funds. No one is happy about us going forward with less than full complement of coaching as we had envisioned it. And as you had given us direction at the prior meeting to go ahead and fill the position. But I'm also hearing concern about trying to move forward and filling the position without the money to back it. Any change that we would make that could allow this to happen would require, I think, the affirmative action of the committee because it would be changing our budget. So what we could do is continue to look to see if there is anything. I'm not truly optimistic about that, but if we find something else that allows us to fund the position, we can bring that back to you for your permission to make some modifications within the budget. Does that sound reasonable?
yeah.
So we'll continue. Old business, district review process.
Okay. First of all, let me apologize by filling up your packet with materials. I did send out a briefing, as you know, that tried to parse it out into things that were just for your information, things that were for your action, and one item that I would request some feedback on. Let me just share for the folks at home a little bit about the district review process and why we're going through it this time and this year as a district. The district review process was originally invented as a backstop to DESE. I believe it was during the Weld administration when there were some concerns about, well, DESE is responsible for holding districts accountable, but there's a very close relationship between DESE and the districts. You know, lots of times people move from DESE to districts and back and forth. Also, DESE functions under the auspices of the Board of Education. And so there was some concern from the executive office about, you could say, well, who's watching the watchers? So the district review process was created as a way to ensure that the accountability being provided by DESE was legitimate, that there was another group out there that was also providing accountability to districts. And I think that's probably our summer settings. And if there was some sort
Our
of
lights work.
That's correct. That's
I
correct.
was just thinking the same thing, Sean.
So the Office for District Reviews originally existed as a part of the governor's office, and it was a separate agency that had its own standards that also did accountability for districts. And the understanding was, actually the legislation that created it said that the focus of this group was going to be primarily underperforming districts, but we'd make sure that everybody got a chance at some point. So it was 75% of the districts that were selected for a district review in any year were underperforming, and the other 25% would be selected at random from across the Commonwealth. However, the office never really developed the capacity to do the 40 per year. They're doing about 20 per year, and so if you figure that same 75-25% ratio, it's going to take a long time at 5 districts per year to get around to all the rest of the 300 districts in the Commonwealth that aren't considered to be underperforming. This is our term, not because we're underperforming, but because we're one of that selected group. I think that I must have some luck or attraction for district reviews because this will be my 3rd time going through the process. Never in an underperforming district. So there's a lot to it.
Very low.
Or likes me.
You should definitely buy a lottery.
So as you can see, there are 6 standards. There are 32 indicators. There are 90 sub-indicators. And over the course of the next year, the district will engage in a multi-step process that results in a report. I shared with you a copy of the Greenfield report just to give you a sense of what we'll get. So as you can see, it was a very thorough evaluation of the district, about 130 pages. That's what ours will look like as well. I'm sure some findings will be similar, some findings will be quite different, but they'll be based on the same set of standards. That also is the reason that I included Greenfield, because DESE updated its standards last spring. Now you might ask, why did I say DESE when I just told you it was from the governor's office? Well, there was later action by the legislature that moved the office out of the governor's office and put it under DESE, but said it had to be an independent office within DESE. So again, it still fills that that role of backing up DESE and making sure that the accountability they provide is really true accountability. And to make the independence even more robust, or the impartiality, I guess you could say, more robust, this office contracts with outside vendors to assist with the district review. So we'll be getting a review by an independent office that's based in large part on information they receive from contracted out consultants who come in and do the assessment for our district. The first part of the process is a self-assessment on all the indicators and sub-indicators. And then the next part of the process will involve interviews and focus groups. 3 members of the school committee will be either randomly selected or purposefully selected by the interview committee to talk to them about the standards that are in the district review, particularly standard 1, which is leadership and governance. The town administrators will also be selected. There will be outreach to families to come in and talk to the reviewers. There will be focus groups for teachers. There'll be focus groups for students. And then the reviewers will also spend several days actually observing classes at all levels across the district and rating the instruction teachers are providing according to a rubric, which is different than the teacher evaluation rubric. It's different than the rubrics that we use in the district, but it is a rubric that I'll be sharing with staff so they'll know what to expect in the upcoming year. Another component of it is document review. And that is a very comprehensive document review. It includes not only the types of assessments and documents that DESE produces, it includes the documents that the district produces. It includes review of such things as looking at school committee meetings, looking at other public meetings, to get a sense of overall needs of the district. And then there are multiple layers of drafting that go through the process. That'll probably be taking place about this time next summer. And then sometime the following fall, we'll receive our report. My hope is to use the report to guide our next strategic plan. Because it is such a comprehensive review, it is so inclusive, it involves all areas of our communities and our district. It systematically looks at 90 different indicators of district strengths and weakness, and we will get our own 130-page report that tells us what we're good at and what we're not so good at, and it's a very small leap from that to writing a new strategic plan. I remember my second time going through this, kind of whining to a school committee about, oh, it's so much work and we're going to have to do this and you're never going to see me again. And one of the committee members said, yeah, but look at it this way. You know, if we were to pay for such an evaluation to be done of us, we would pay, you know, tens of thousands of dollars, maybe, you know, up to $100,000. We're going to get it for free. And it'll be something that, you know, because of the timing of it, that we can use to save money in our strategic planning. I want to work on it, Sasha. And so that's where we are. So that's just a little bit about the district review process.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
So the report will be ready in the fall of 2026?
Correct. Which is the last year of our strategic plan, so it'll be a good time to be developing the next strategic plan. So going to the self-review, I would like to direct your attention to the district review self-assessment document that is in your packet. And under Standard 1, Indicator 3, District Culture, which is on page 6. There is an indicator.
I don't know where it is, if we have like this hundreds of pages here.
The document is called Massachusetts District Review Self-Assessment.
Yeah, it took me hours to get through
After the Greenfield one?
Yeah, after the, right after the Greenfield.
There you go, that's
Here
it.
it is, district.
Yeah.
Page 6. Now that I'm here, maybe Richie.
it. Thank you. So it's after Greenfield, I would say about 3/4 of an inch.
You got it now.
Here, Tim, I can show.
Okay, so if everyone's there, this indicator is called mutual accountability, and it says, together, the school committee, superintendent, and district level administrators set a tone for the district in which stakeholders, including students, families, district leaders, school leaders, union leaders, teachers, and other school staff, collaborate, make decisions, and exercise agency in advancing opportunities and outcomes for all students. Now, we're asked to do two things with this. One is to draft a response that explains where we think we are and the evidence for that, and then to rate ourselves where we think we are. So since this is one that is really shared between everyone who sits at this table, talks about the district leadership as well as the school committee, this should be something that represents our collective judgment. The central office staff have put together this draft for your consideration and want to see what you think about it, whether this is okay to submit as part of our self-assessment or whether you'd like us to change it. So our draft is, the district has taken important steps towards fostering a culture of mutual accountability among leadership and stakeholders, though we recognize that this work is still developing. The superintendent, district leaders, and school committee work collaboratively and transparently to advance student outcomes. Over the past several years, we have broadened stakeholder involvement in decision-making through key initiatives that reflect our commitment to shared leadership and continuous improvement. Notably, we have implemented an equity walk practice and engaging leaders and educators in reflective conversations about equitable learning environments, developed and implemented a multi-tiered system of supports to align supports for all learners and promote data-driven decision-making, established curriculum councils that bring together educators across grade levels and disciplines to build and align pre-K post-12 curriculum, formed a diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI committee, which has created a vision of equity to guide the work across the district, enhanced the Special Education Advisory Council's CPAC's agency, giving families and students with disabilities a stronger voice in advocating for equitable access and services, created an Innovation Career Pathway Advisory Council to expand student opportunities in career and technical education. Our next steps include strengthening leadership capacity and collaborative practices, embedding equity-focused administrative systems that can withstand changes of leadership, and further aligning our accountability structures to our shared shared vision of student success and equity. Based on all that, we think we earn a rating of well on a scale that goes from not at all well to somewhat well to very well. So what do you think about that response and that rating?
Agreed.
I think it was very well.
From reading the Greenfields and all the other documentation that you gave us, and it was a lot for a short period of time, and I did my best to get through everything and to absorb as much as I could. It seems like that what they're looking for, and please help me if I'm wrong, this is just from what I've gathered, that they're looking to make sure that we are doing the framework needed to be a really successful district. Do we have these groups? Do we have this communication line? Are we doing this? Not if we're doing it well or not, but like, do we have it in place, you know? And I think that we could just add a lot more to this. There's a lot more things that we are doing. And do we want to be facing and say, here are the things that we think that we're not doing and get ahead of it? Or I mean, as someone who's done this twice already, is this really what they're looking for?
What they're looking for is consistency among the different groups. So we're going to submit our self-assessment, and then they're going to come in and they're going to do a bunch of focus groups and say, well, your self-assessment said you do all this. Talk to me about your equity walk practice. Talk to me about your MTSS. You know, and they're going to be looking for other people they talk to say the same kinds of things. If so, then they will make their own judgment. In terms of whether we're well or very well, you know, they'll also make a judgment about that because it will be, to a certain extent, whether we have the things in place, you're absolutely right about that, but also a qualitative judgment about, so how effective are they? So when, you know, and I can be persuaded, this is why I'm here. The reason I said well is because I think we're at a place in the district where, you know, a few key changes of personnel can make a lot of things fall apart. What we really want to do is get the practices embedded so that it doesn't matter who's sitting in any of these seats, it just keeps going, you know. And that's, to me, the difference between well and very well, which is why I put that there. You know, you might have a different opinion about that too. That was just sort of my thought and sort of our thought. We worked on that together.
So something that came to mind, so I do think that currently, right now, I think we are doing well, but I think when I was looking at these things, like I'm thinking about the rating at report card of like emerging learner. So I felt like, well, you know, today we can say, yes, we've done these things and we've done this successfully, but I feel like we are, you know, we've kind of taken off on it. So I don't know that I would say that, you know, I don't know that it would be a strong well, but I think certainly heading in that direction because I think when, you know, look, again, it's not from today, yes, but I think it's taken a lot to get there and we're just sort of arriving at these things in the last, you know, year or two, I would say. So for me, I would say somewhat well, if I was.
I would agree with that, somewhat well to, not well at all, but somewhat well, because we have had a difficult budget season. We have been told that we are not trusted by different other either appointed or elected officials in both towns. And the teachers union and stuff like that, we don't have a contract in place. And the teachers, I know, are frustrated with that. So, yeah, I appreciate the well, but I would say, I would also go with Michelle and say somewhat well. If there was anything lower, I would pick that, but not all well. That's a zero. No.
And I think my response also speaks to when you talked about, you know, having, you know, people in, you know, key positions, and I think that has helped us, you know, kind of take off with where we are today. So.
I'm a little disappointed. I understand that you see this as a positive because this is work that's going to be done, that's going to help us, that they're paying for. That's the part I'm worried about. Why are we looking at 25% of the school districts by their own assessment that are doing well? How much is this going to cost? Shouldn't DESE start looking at their budget and start, I think it ought to be put on hold. At least the 25% of the people who their own assessment says we're doing okay. I don't want to, you know, make a lot of work for us, and it would be nice, but we're in tough times right now. What are they thinking in DESE? We're sitting here rubbing our hands and wiping our brows, trying to figure out how we're going to keep providing services to these kids, and they're spending money like drunken sailors on 25% of the schools that by their own assessment says they're doing fine. Now, I am never against self-reflection and looking at the district and what we're doing. I think that's very important. But we gotta take a look at the time that we're in. And you just read that thing, DEI is in all over that place. What are we're trying to say to the federal government? Yeah, hit us more. Not that I don't agree that we should be talking diversity, equity, and inclusion. We should be. But that's a big target on our back right now. Yeah, we gotta fight it. We have to fight it, but the state's gotta be with us on this. It just makes a lot of sense to me that you're gonna be evaluating 25% of schools. That's a mighty expensive operation. I've been through this operation before. It's not cheap. And if they got that kind of money, they ought to be holding it back to fill in the gaps that are gonna be coming our way.
Well, I think what he said before is that they were supposed to do 40 a year, but they can't afford it, so they're only doing 20 a year. So that's the Massachusetts government underfunding their objective. But I mean, I hear what you're saying. I don't think we have a choice, correct?
That's correct. And I understand that that comment was directed really at the state and how the state is spending their money rather than what we're doing. But when you look at other documentation around the district reviews, those are being done under Massachusetts standards. And the essential component of the Massachusetts standards are commitment to equity. And when you look at a lot of the indicators, we're going to be judged on how well we're implementing equity in the district. In terms of the target, I guess it's who do you want to have the target on your back from, the state or the feds? You know, this is a state evaluation that's saying we must be leaders in equity. If we are found to be acceptable under the state standards and the federal government finds that unacceptable, that's really a tough spot for the district to be in. I know the committee has been really clear on its commitments to equity, so I think that we just need to move forward with the process under the standards that the state has promulgated. If they're going to spend money anyways. We can't say, hey, we're doing okay, save your money, don't evaluate us. They kind of pick us, and when your number comes up, you have to go through the process.
So my opinion is that it should stay at well. And when I look at what it says, what mutual accountability is, to work collaboratively, transparently, to advance student outcomes and broaden stakeholder involvement in decision making. I think this district does it well, and my opinion for that is because as an educator, I'm on different committees for the state. So for my own district, so I get to sit in different meetings with districts from all around the state. So if I'm comparing it to where other districts fall, I think we're doing well. That's what I will say. I will not call out other districts. But as a whole, when I'm working with other districts and we're discussing initiatives, and I'm talking to like the eastern side of the state or northeastern or whatever, our district is doing well comparatively. When we're talking about broadening stakeholder involvement in decision making and transparency, we are doing well.
I don't have any argument with that. I agree with it 100%, and I agree with you, John, that it would be helpful to us. It just confounds me that these appointed people on DESE have no idea what school districts are facing. They would be looking at their own damn budgets and start preparing for this, like they're asking us to prepare. I'm frustrated. DESE doesn't do a good job as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't do a good job in terms of evaluating our schools. solely on MCAS, not looking at the social, emotional, spiritual, and behavioral growth of students, which is every bit as important as anything that you can measure on MCAS. There's a lot more involved in becoming a positive, productive human being that can be measured on any damn test. I'm sorry, I'm just letting my frustrations go here, but you know, I would like to send a letter to Desi and say, what are you doing to secure resources to replace the resources that the federal government wants to take away from our children? I would like to send a letter to them to that effect.
So how does the committee feel overall about the response of the rating, the self-assessment rating of well?
Listening to everybody else, I think I'm okay with well.
So majority says well, so keep it as well.
Okay, so we'll leave that one alone. Now, there's one on here that's yours and yours alone. That's indicator 1.1. It's on page 4. And it's called School Committee. It says the district has a school committee with a working governance structure that fulfills its statutory responsibilities, sets educational district goals, and advances policies and programs that provide all students, particularly those from historically underserved groups and communities, right there, with equitable opportunities to excel in all areas across all grades. So that's your opportunity to reflect on yourself. I'd be happy to type if folks have language they want to put in for response.
So we have to write a whole thing just like you did for the other one, not just pick a checkbox.
Some narrative,
Somewhere.
some narrative, no, I do not have a draft.
Just got rid.
Is this something that we are expected to have done today, or is this something that we can talk about and we can, as a school committee, put something together, and what time would you need that by?
It
This
doesn't
seems
have to-
rather important.
It doesn't have to be done today. If it's something you feel would be best to continue to the next meeting, that could certainly be done. We'll be working on the self-assessment for the next 100 days. I mean, there's 90 indicators, so it's a lot of stuff.
So, yeah, that's a great idea, Sean. Maybe if we all think about, I don't know, writing a couple sentences, and then at our next meeting, we can put, maybe put stuff together into some kind of a unified thing. You can't really work on it outside of the meeting by email chain, like I would do with something else at work, because that could be considered deliberation, so.
So it would be your homework for the next meeting to come prepared with these.
Homework.
Yes.
Yeah, work outside of the
Unless you
meeting.
feel you have nothing to say.
Would it be better, maybe, if we came up with whatever language that we would like and sent it to a third party, maybe John or to Erin, and let them combine everything, and we can go and we can review what the thoughts are there, and maybe just kind of, oh, we like that, we don't like that, we like that, we don't like that, and we can come up with the assessment that way. I think it would save a lot of time, but this is your meeting.
It's the committee's decision, it's not my decision to make.
That seems reasonable. We can send, is John willing to collate drafts?
I'm willing to do that. The other thing that I could do without violating the open meeting law is make sure that I share any information I get so that you can see what's been submitted and then see what the result is, and you'll be able to make your own judgment about whether it's true to the comments that were received.
I think that would have to be done in the meeting, because if you have all of our opinions and you sent it and you correlate it and sent it back out to us with that, I guess we wouldn't know who wrote what. But
The key thing would be not to comment on it. would just be to say, okay, so Sean sends a few sentences in, you know, I collect them and put them in the bucket for the draft response and share to everyone, I received these sentences. You know, as long as they don't comment back, that's not deliberation,
Okay.
it's just information sharing.
That's the same way we do the superintendent evaluation, more or less.
But we share the final result in the meeting. We don't send it out to everyone beforehand.
Right, but it's just having, everyone having had an opportunity to read what the draft would look like, and then we can discuss it publicly. But it just gives people sort of an idea of what the draft statement would look like, so then they can come with additional ideas if there were portions of the assessment that didn't seem accurate.
That's fine, I just wanted to.
You mean like there'd be a collated draft included as part of the materials on Google Drive after the meeting goes?
Correct.
Yeah.
Are you looking for like bullet points like you did for the one we just talked about? Is that what you're looking for?
That's how I envision our whole self-evaluation to
So in the
look.
same format?
Yeah, I mean, there's no requirement that it be done this way, it's just, I think that when you present a judgment and then present some evidence that supports the judgment, it makes it easier for the people getting it to say, okay, maybe this is right, or maybe we have to do more investigating.
And are we answering all of them?
No,
Or
just
the number one,
Just,
the first one?
just 1.1.1, it's page 4, the first box, it says school committee. Everything else in that indicator, district leadership, school leadership team, school and parent advisory councils will be done by the district leadership team. That's actually the focus of our retreat. There was a fairly substantial communication that went out to the district leadership team, basically saying, do your homework before the meeting.
Okay, great. So we will have this discussion at our next meeting, which is August 21st. So would it be fair to say that by August 1st, everybody has submitted something to John and Aaron? It gives a few weeks, gives like 3 weeks, or we can do the following week.
Yep.
Or you want to say the 7th, or that's Thursday,
Sure.
and then 14th, so that gives them a week to correlate and send back out to us? Is that enough time or not?
A week is plenty of time.
Okay.
Okay, so no later than August 8th, which is Friday. So for those that will be doing it on the 7th. It gives you that extra day, so then just make sure he has it. John and Aaron have it. Okay.
So specifically, you want us to comment on the school committee?
Correct. Okay, continuing on with the district review. Maybe I should say, are there any other questions on that? Or is that all set? Okay, continuing on with the district review, I've also included in your packet a draft communication to Nick Bro and Brian Domina, because they are also other parties who will be involved. Specifically, I think they'll be asked to talk on the budget process and relations between towns and the school and capital planning. So I wouldn't want to reach out to them without informing you and giving you a sense of what I want to say. So I've included this draft communication in your packet, and I'm just looking for feedback on that if it seems appropriate.
Yeah, I read it the other day, that seems fine.
And our plan will be to go through basically that same process. I would like to sit down with them and Doug and say, okay, here are the indicators that I think we can write better than anyone else. Let's come up with a statement, hopefully a statement that we can all live with, so that when we all have our interviews, you know, we can be singing from the same hymn. Okay, so I'll move forward with that. And then the next item is a recommendation from Principal Hale to add 5 choice slots. That would bring the number in in grade 9 only, that would bring the number to 20.
I'd like to make a motion to accept his recommendation.
Second.
Questions or discussion?
And we have the space, we have the room and everything.
Yes, and I'll just add, this will help us address some families that I feel personally a little bit bad about, who got kind of caught off guard in the process, because we did have families who had reached out to us early on in the process and asked if they could enroll. And we told them no, because at that time we hadn't approved any seats, because we were looking at how much capacity we needed to reserve for the ICP. Later on, they missed the communication that went out in the newspaper, and then started finding out from friends that they got in, and they're like, how come? I was told by the superintendent's office there's no school choice. So this would allow us to clear up that problem as well.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Okay, so now we are moving on to public comment. Is anyone here interested in making public comment this evening? Okay, we'll continue with subcommittee updates. Curriculum subcommittee.
Nothing to report.
Planning committee, nothing to report at this time. Finance, operations, technology subcommittee.
Just one last thing on the planning committee. Did we get any feedback? Are the towns talking? Are they not talking?
Communication has been sent out.
We requested if they're going to meet. I've heard back from one board that they were checking with their board to hear if anyone knew, and I didn't hear from the other board. So still waiting. And we reached out to say, are you meeting together? Having a joint meeting?
So since our last meeting, we were hoping that they were going to get together and they would, I heard they were considering it, but as far as we know, they have not met yet.
Correct. I know Hamden was waiting for their new select board member to be elected. The elections were June 23rd. Somebody was elected. I know they've had one select board meeting, but I know that since that one select board meeting, communication has been sent to find out where they are and if they do plan on meeting. But we also, even regardless, if they are planning to meet, then we will wait until they have their meeting, their joint meeting. Otherwise, the planning committee, I know the communication will be going out to the planning committee to find out everybody's availability, because one way or another, we do have to come back together and decide on next steps and bring that back to the school committee to see where we are and what we're doing next.
Okay.
Since I'm not on the planning committee, I wanted to point out some reflections I was having on this, because it's come down to debates over finances. Right? I think at the next meeting it might be helpful for them to hear from the representatives of the school committee exactly how much money both towns have saved by the collaborative closing of TWB. At that time, without inflation, it was about a $450,000 a year savings school budget. That was over 6 years ago. So both towns have shared over $3 million savings in the closing of TWB, which I think is something that they really should be reflecting on as they're, negotiating over the nickels and dimes of the Wilbraham Middle Schools. The other thing I've reflected on, and I know they're going back and forth, and I know that, I'm starting to feel more and more strongly that in the regional agreement, all we should be putting on is, that expenses are shared for regional buildings that are owned by the district, not specifying specific buildings, to make it kind of future-proof and to leave it kind of deliberately a little bit ambiguous. Like, for instance, we may never be in a position to buy Wilbraham Middle School, but if something like that was passed, forever into the future, at any point, if Wilbraham wanted contributions towards capital expenses, all they would need to do would be to donate the building to the school district, or offer it at a price that the school district could afford. Those are two things I guess we don't reorganize the plan, but it was the kind of thoughts I've had. I think that it is very important for the towns to see strong leadership from the school committee going forward, because they don't seem to be
unfortunately, I think we're in the position where we will need to find some way to bring them together. Because it would be a real negative, I think, for the future of the kids if we can't get any amendment to the regional agreement passed. And it has become a sticking point. So that's all I have to say.
If you look at it, right, the way it's proposed is, let's call it 80-20 for easy math, right? But if the town of Hamden says, no, we don't like that expense, they say no, it doesn't get done. So, I mean, I understand their issues with saying like all these things should have been done before. But if they are like, we don't want to pay for that, then they just say no and that project doesn't get done. So, yeah, I think simply that's what it is. That there is a safety net for both towns in that.
I'm just saying we need an acceptable pathway forward for fall town meetings to pass the amendments to the regional agreement. We need a path forward.
Do you think there is a path forward for this fall? Michelle?
I'm not sure, so we're waiting on our select boards to help us determine that. And I think the other thing is we're also waiting on some additional guidance and feedback from Jesse.
Correct. The Department of Education has, the commissioner, the former interim commissioner has proposed some changes to the regulations regarding regional agreements and regional districts, which I'm waiting to get guidance from Jesse on. There are some parts of our current batch of proposed amendments that I think would be impacted. Of course, you know, I haven't heard from them. I think that in part is because they may be reluctant to comment on regulations that have not been voted on by the Board of Education yet, but the board vote is scheduled for late September. And if the regulations go into effect immediately, it means we would have to change our agreement to conform to those regulations before the town meetings.
So most likely we're going to push it off again another year.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I haven't gotten any clean yet on that piece. That's one more piece we have to.
Yeah, but we have to have the documents at least 45 days ahead of time, and the town meeting's going to be in October.
Yep.
Correct. And then I believe the tentative date is the 27th of October. So we're sort of in a holding pattern, so waiting to see. So by next meeting, we should certainly have an update. Finance Operations Technology Subcommittee.
Nothing to report on this time.
LPVAC Collaborative Representative.
Nothing to report.
Negotiation Subcommittee. Nothing to report. Policy Subcommittee.
We have stuff to report. All right. If you remember, we had a passionate plea from the family at the last school committee. We reviewed the policy JEB. We did edit the policy, but we did not, in our edits to the policy, change the September 1st date. We made an edit to the policy because our policy left a loophole where a student can be eligible for kindergarten, but now they're eligible for 6th grade if their birthday was like on August 29th. So the policy now will read more in accordance with Massachusetts state law. It just wasn't worded right. Massachusetts state law is the year you turn 6, you are required to be in school. Instead, the policy said you have to be 6 to be in 1st grade. So kindergarten is not required in the state of Massachusetts. So the edit to the policy changes that so that it more reflects the year that you turn 6, you have to be in school. That's what it says now. So there's no longer a loophole and stuff like that. As a side note, we did also discuss another policy that we have for that particular family's case, that we have a policy where, a teacher of a student in our district, along with the building principal, can review a student and decide if they think it's appropriate for them to be advanced or held back. So since this particular student was in a class in our district, we kind of bounced it to the teacher and building principal that, they, under that policy, have the power, if they feel appropriate, to make an action or not. So I don't know about the results of that, but so this is the first reading for our modifications to policy JEB, entrance age. We were also tasked by the committee to discuss ID badges. There is no policy on ID badges. It doesn't seem like other districts, the members of the committee, ID badges, no one had in the policy subcommittee had strong feelings one way or the other. I think I'm the only one that has a strong feeling, and that's that I think it's a bit shady for somebody having a badge that can open the door to a school that hasn't been Corey certified. And we can't require a school committee member to be Corey certified, right? You know, for instance, Donald Trump could be could be elected to the school committee, and based on news stories and so forth, he may not pass for it, right? So anyway, so probably it's a good idea to just not have ID badges. I think everybody was okay with that. I think probably the badges that currently exist, if they're just deactivated, people want to hold on to them for sentimental reasons. I think that's okay, right, John?
Correct.
Correct, but they'll, be deactivated in terms of access to buildings. I think that since there's no policy on that, that is something really the committee should be deciding.
Okay, one thing. Yeah, just to clarify, what we came up with on that family that was here is that we have the principal can keep a kid back. So we mentioned that the principal, the teacher can also double promote a kid.
Right.
So since the kid was already here, he can be double promoted if they thought so, if they thought it was appropriate to first grade as the family asked for, without changing any policy.
But that's not what the policy says. The policy says students who will be 5 years of age before September 1st. Exceptions are only made by the superintendent for new students who have successfully completed kindergarten in another public school district. It says nothing about any evaluation. I'm just saying that I think we are going to have a bunch of parents when they say, ooh, loophole, we're going to have a lot of people asking and requesting this because my child's amazing and my child is fantastic, and I think that my child shouldn't have to follow the September 1st rule. And why don't we just make it that every child gets evaluated, and if you pass, you pass, or if you don't, because this is really a slippery slope. I mean, I feel for that family. I'm just saying that that's not what the policy says. The policy here says that there's no exception except for the superintendent if they had already been in kindergarten.
So the other policy that we referred to is not something that family requests, okay, but it does empower a teacher and building principal to hold back or advance a student if they think it's appropriate and in their best educational interest.
But they're not
it doesn't talk about that they are a student. They are a preschool student in our school district. So for that particular student, they are a student in our school district. So the preschool teacher and the building principal, if they feel it's appropriate, could make a decision to move the kid to kindergarten. But I don't think that there's no mechanism by which the parents can be requesting their kid to be moved out. And John did mention in the meeting that policy is almost always used for holding kids back. It's a very rare scenario for a student to ever be selected to be skipped a grade for lots of reasons. A lot happens over the course of a year. So even if the student's gifted and awesome and stuff like that, and I still stick by my own personal opinion that I think it's the best thing for that child would be for them to wait another year for kindergarten. That's what I do if it was my son. But that other policy exists. So we would refer that to the family, but the preschool teacher and the building principal have the ability to advance the student if they really thought that it would be a travesty for them to not be in kindergarten.
I understand that, then we should edit this policy to mention that, because they say the only exception, well, it doesn't say only, it just says exceptions, exceptions are only made by the superintendent for new students who have successfully completed kindergarten in another school district. So I'm just saying.
I think that's just in reference to the entrance age of the student.
Right, so September 1st, right?
I think one way we could handle that is by adding reference to the other policy that Dr. Gerbasi is talking about, which is the promotion and retention of students. So it could say, only exception, students who've attended kindergarten somewhere else, or students who are recommended by their teacher for double promotion under policy, whatever the code is.
And that's the other problem that could come up, like a kid could move into town that already did kindergarten somewhere else because they have a different age. That's what they, okay.
That's in the policy. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but could you had spoken very eloquently at the last meeting with those parents who were here about the difficulties and challenges of a kindergarten teacher, especially with the different needs and wants of children from different ages. Could you just expound on that a little bit, if I'm not putting you on the
I know,
spot?
but is there anything we're really deciding, right? For what purpose though, Sean? Like, what would you like to?
No, is that something that should be added to the policy, or is
I don't
that
think it
something?
should be
that-
added.
Okay.
Except for the recommended, if you wanted to recommend, saying or reference that other policy, whatever. But
This is the first reading of this one, so we didn't make any amendments. Correct?
Well, yeah, totally.
I'm letting the committee know if you do that.
In addition to the committee to decide which rules. So, all right, so we will discuss this again at the next policy subcommittee meeting. So we will not have a policy subcommittee meeting in August. So let's not put a second reading for this on the agenda for our next meeting.
Just a couple of clarifications. It doesn't have to go back to the subcommittee for amendments. Amendments can be made here. What I was going to ask for our preparation for the next meeting is language such as the language suggested by Mr. Kennedy something that the committee wants? If that's the case, someone could say, make it in the form of a motion in a second, and then if there was a vote, we'd know whether or not to include that in the policy for next time.
I don't think there's.
In other words, did you want us to add, the exception for students who are recommended for double promotion according to the promotion and retention policy?
No, I don't want that added.
It's already in policy.
But this speaks against it because it says exceptions are only made.
It's for new students.
It's saying that other exception doesn't apply. So we need to either change this if that's the exception that the committee wants to add, but I don't want to add that exception. But if that exception is something you want to add, we do need to edit this policy.
The key is the new student. That's already in that policy there, so it's not, this other case doesn't affect new students.
Exceptions are only made for a new student.
New students.
Yeah.
But that's not a new student. It's just,
Who have
you read the whole
successfully
sentence,
completed
right?
kindergarten.
Right. So if it's a new student, then the exception's only made based on that. It's how you read the sentence. We're saying this other exception, it's a different category. If the kid is not a new student, they're an existing student. It's a different policy. So I read it differently. It's just how the language is, how you.
Actually, with the rewording of the policy, that sentence about exceptions really doesn't need to be there because the policy now reads what the state says, each child must attend school beginning in September of the calendar year in which she or he turns 6. The way the policy was worded before, where all students must have reached age 6, then needed the exception sentence because there might be a 5th grader that already did kindergarten. There might be a 5-year-old that already did kindergarten in Hartford or somewhere else that moved to Wilbraham or Hamden and then is ready for 1st grade, right?
And I think if, Sean, what you're asking also is maybe, so you're not meeting, the policy subcommittee is not planning to meet in August, if I'm hearing you correct. So
We
it's
haven't
in here.
organized or anything, so we weren't, but we could if the committee wants it.
So I guess it would also be up to the committee as to whether or not they would like to revisit, they would want the policy subcommittee to revisit the second policy that you referenced regarding the holdback or promotion of a student with upon the recommendation of teacher and principal. So we can talk about that at the next meeting and what's a little bit further along.
Yeah,
If
just
there's
saying.
any amendments that need to be made.
If that's what you want, then let's make it reflected, then by taking out that line. If that's, because that's what you're saying that you want as a committee is not how it's written.
I don't speak for the committee. We don't have a chair because we haven't reorganized yet. But as I look at it, right, John, do you think that that exception sentence actually doesn't need to be there anymore?
Well,
But then if a new student,
I think
but then if a new student comes in who is,
I think we'd want to preserve the flexibility to allow students who've attended kindergarten in another district to be not put in kindergarten again. So I'd be leery of,
I also say I get students from other countries that have attended kindergarten in their own country, and their ages are a little bit different. So I wouldn't want them repeating something that they.
you can say exceptions are made by the superintendent for new students who have successfully completed. And take out that only, and I think that would.
I agree
seem
that
what you're
taking
talking
the word
about.
only makes the grammar better than the whole thing. Gets your type.
So you, John, you have your flexibility, and then parents have some hope that they can bypass that September deadline.
That's a good compromise.
If you're,
Well, lucky for us, we have 2 more readings of this, so we can, let's talk about it next time.
all right,
Wordsmith, and we can figure out some
okay.
proposals for language as to, because I think, while some people are saying the same thing, I think maybe having some, concrete language to look at would be helpful.
or, I mean, I don't know if you want to add, John, or how, like the reference to the other policy, so like exceptions are made by the superintendent for new students who have successfully completed kindergarten in another public school district, or students that have been recommended for double promotion within our own.
But I think those are 2 different issues, because this is entrance age and the other one is students already attending school. So I don't think they actually.
It opens up.
Well, that sentence is just talking really mostly about first grade, because it's talking about successful completion kindergarten somewhere else.
Two completely separate policies.
Yes, 2 completely separate policies.
Agreed.
We'll look at some drafts next time. Yeah. There's no vote. Yeah, we'll put it on as just a vote for change of language next time.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda. Or did we finish? or-
No, we have the LPVET Corporation representative.
I'm sorry, forgive me.
There was none of me.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Any questions or concerns? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Motion
Mary
carries.
does an amazing job as always.
Okay, so we'll move on to superintendent's update.
Thank you. Let me start with enrollment as of July 1st, 2,773. I do not expect that to be a complete count. We're in the midst of enrollment, and there are lots of changes especially at the kindergarten and preschool level. So we'll have a better sense of what our numbers are in August and then for September for sure. So for my update tonight, I'd like to give a review of where things stand at the end of year 3 of the strategic plan. And for that, I would direct your attention to these tables. They're multicolored. As you recall, the colors correspond to the color coding of our strategic plan. In year 1, first page, I'd only direct you to item 8. It has an arrow under it. This is an item that was not completed when scheduled in year 1 because I made error in scheduling it for year one. Our updated medical emergency response plan is not due until this year. So we submitted it this year, so that makes that status change to complete. In year two, directing your attention to item number 16, that was an ongoing item for last year. It was not completed. At this point, I would say that that is a completed item. As I had said, when we were developing our group of partners for the ICP, this is exactly what this item was looking for. It is coalition to involve and engage community business partners. This is just a draft which I would share of a graphic we're working on with our partners. It's not complete yet, but we envision this as some of our branding for the program and sort of a backdrop for what moves will take for students as they come into the ICP. So that's, I would add that as evidence for that one being completed. So now going to year three, which is the year just completed and was the main event for the update. The first action step was to create and implement a systemic school-to-school transition model. That has not really started yet. We have addressed a few things dealing with transfer of records from school to school, but we haven't had a chance to address that in any substantive way, so that'll continue on until the next year. Item number 2, I am updating to ongoing. I think this is one of those items that can never be fully completed. It's an ongoing item. We've had many presentations in the past about our MTSS model. In fact, our MTSS model appears as evidence for a number of these other indicators. So I wanted to give you something different with this. So I gave you some evidence about our inclusive practices. It's an item 2 in the attachments. This is indicator 5. It's a piece of accountability that we get from the Department of Education. We have targets that we are tasked with hitting for the placement of students with disabilities. The placement of students in substantially separate programs or out-of-district placements are numbers not to exceed because those are more restrictive placements and you want to stay below that threshold. So you can see that in both of those cases, we are meeting the target. We're well below what the state would consider permissible for placement in students of those types. However, we are falling short of the goal for placement of students in full inclusion, just by a couple of percentage points, but it indicates that we have more work to do in making sure that students have access to fully inclusive special education programs and placements. So you might ask, how can we be hitting the goal for not having too many students out of district and not having too many students in substantially separate classes and still not hitting the goal for students in fully included classes? And that's because there's another category which is called partial inclusion. And so we have basically too many students in partial inclusion right now, and the goal will be to move more students out of partially inclusive programs and settings into fully inclusive programs and settings. So ongoing, have done good work on the MTSS piece, but still some work to go on inclusion. Number 3, parent and family engagement via newsletter. So I included an example of parent feedback on our communication. This is a feedback from a specific school, although it's representative of all the schools. That's item number 3 in your attachments. And you can see this is the survey that parents get as part of the SQM. They have 6 items that they are asked to respond to. 2 of them have to do directly with communication, and 1 of them has to do with how they feel valued by the school. And you can see that school to family communication is in the ideal range. Teacher communication to parent is in the approval range, and parent valued as community members is in the approval range. This is very similar to what we see in all the schools. We got very strong positive feedback from parents on our communication practices. Also, I'll throw in on student academic progress. Across the board, we're in the approval range as judged by parents. they feel their students are making good academic progress. So the goal here was to engage parents more by websites, by newsletters, by communication. The feedback we have from parents says that that's approval or ideal, so I think that's completed, although that will be ongoing. It's not like now that we have those ratings, we're going to stop, but I think we've definitely hit the mark with that. Number 4 and number 8 both have to do with social emotional learning in MTSS. And so I've included as your next piece of evidence the tiered social emotional support section of our MTSS document. Item number 4 asks how are we implementing, or asks us to implement MTSS features applicable to climate and SEL. So you can see that right there. Item number 9 asks us to identify interventions and supports for identified social skills deficits. So I have 9 rated as completed because we have identified them, and I have 4 identified as ongoing because we'll always be needing to provide social emotional support when working on our climate. Item number 5 is the safety flip chart updates. I have that rated as in progress because it's at the printers right now. We actually have a credit on our account, so one piece of good financial news today is we'll be able to update the flip charts at not great expense. Number 6 is develop assessments, knowledge awareness of students and staff. This was related specifically to our cultural responsiveness, and so I included in your table of evidence item number 6. This is an item from the SQM. This is also a school's item, but it also is representative of items across the district. You can see the things that are asked on the student survey. You can see things that are asked on the teacher survey. You can see this particular school, as most schools in the district, are in the growth range. That's a radio dial. You kind of have to hit that bright black line in order to hit the approval range. So I'm marking this one as completed, not because we have hit the approval range yet for cultural responsiveness, but because the item in the strategic plan was to find a way to measure it. So we have a measure, it's a valid and reliable measure, it's something that we plan on administering every year to see if schools are getting closer or farther away from that approval cut score. Number 9, I've already talked about. Number 10 is staff will be trained to examine and evaluate data from various sources to guide instruction and interventions. Have this as an ongoing. I've included for item 10 basically almost all of our professional development agendas, and I've highlighted in blue all of the items that have to do with training teachers to become more savvy users of student data. As you can see, almost every professional development day in our district has at least one session around helping to support teachers in becoming more data savvy consumers of student achievement data. So ongoing for that. Number 11 is providing opportunities for families to participate in learning sessions related to meeting the needs of all learners. I put agendas from CPAC meetings and the agenda from our elementary literacy night. These are items that are right on point to helping parents and families understand how we try to meet the needs of all learners. Obviously, that parent education is always an ongoing thing, but it's happening in the district, and so I think it deserves an ongoing rating. Number 12 is establishing a consistent and targeted online platform. Number 15 is highly related, so I use the same piece of evidence for both of those. This is just an aligned learning table showing the aligned learning and communication platforms in use in the district. I don't know because I wasn't here when this was written, but I suspect this might be an artifact of COVID. When schools shut down, people started using everything, and it was really crazy making for lots of kids and families. But we have really pulled back, as you can see. It's a limited number of platforms. It's the same type of platforms regardless of the school you're at. And so that is done. Number 13 is identify pertinent contact resources and structure for the website. All of that was done when we created the new website, so I just put snapshots from that. Completed. Number 14 is develop a social media strategy that defines policies and procedures for our staff. The idea was to make sure that staff didn't, unawares, get into trouble with social media. The school committee addressed that when we passed policy IJNDD last year, which provides the guardrails for staff. So that's completed. Next, I already talked about 15, so number 16 asks us to add brief bios and pictures of school committee members and central office staff and administrators to the website. So we haven't started that yet, but we'll be coming by with cameras and giving an opportunity.
Use our badge pictures.
There you go. We could do that. Or we could do more. We could update them, and we'll provide a structure for biographies.
In addition to mug shots, maybe some candidates for meetings.
That'd be great.
As long as
Okay.
it doesn't cost anything to add that to the website.
I think it would be a great project for student in the fall.
Oh,
Yep.
yes.
Okay. Next, I'm going to skip 17. I want to end on 17 because it's actually my favorite one. 18 and 19, you received reports on this from Lisa earlier in the year on the comprehensive reforms that she did to our mentoring program and our staff induction program. I'm sure you remember. I can see Frankie sitting at the last chair there, and Jill was there, and all of the mentors came and talked to us about the program. So that's been completed. I didn't put any more evidence because I'm sure that is strong in your memory. Finally, item 17 asked for enhanced public relations and promotion of district highlights through a monthly article in the Hampton Wilbraham Times. So I have given you a chronology of positive articles from the Hampton Wilbraham Times this year, and item number 17, there were 25 positive articles. These are not informational articles. These are not things about the many articles about the budget or the many articles about the regional agreement. These are articles about positive things happening in the schools that I think anyone would consider just purely good press. Now, I don't know why the Hampton Wilbraham Times was chosen as the media outlet for this measure. Certainly we have had other good articles in other media outlets, including the Reminder. So I want to make sure that there's no kind of media bias here. We're not trying to favor one news organ over another. In fact, the Reminder did a very positive story on the reforms that Lisa has made to the mentoring and induction program. But the strategic plan said Hampton Wilbraham Times, so that's what I listed. It said 1 article a month. We got 25 articles in 10 months. We did have a few months that were missing. November was a hard month for some reason. I don't know why. I think March was a tough month for some reason, but we more than made up for that in the other months. So obviously that'll be an ongoing, but I think we hit the target there. I think if the concern was that there was never any positive news about the schools.
I don't think that's what that was. I remember I was at the meeting when they discussed this, and for those who were there, tell me if I'm wrong, it's for us to put an article, the district to put an article each month into the paper saying, all right, this is what we have going on, this is what we did, this is what's coming up, to inform people on what's going on. I don't think it had anything to do with positive spin or making us look good. I just thought it was a way of communicating to people on the things that are happening, the things that are ongoing, where we stand with negotiation, where we stand with the budget, where we stand with whatever. I thought that's what they were asking for on that. So you might have missed
That could be. I might have misunderstood it. And I guess, I would take some direction from the committee, and if you want me to go back and try to work on that. I would just say that I think getting independently sourced independently sourced stories that are being written by a neutral observer, to me, means more than us doing our own thing. There were lots of other things I didn't include specifically, like we had announcements about awards, we had announcements about things, but I guess that maybe not understanding that item, I didn't include them in this chronology because I was like, well, I can do that anytime, you know?
Have we thought of maybe getting the original participants in the strategic plan, getting them together and doing this presentation with them, look at this is what I've done, and to get their feedback, yeah, that's great, or maybe that's something you didn't mean or something like that. And I'm not trying to throw more work on you, which this would, unless we took care of it as a school committee, but maybe invite the original participants to a school committee meeting where we can go over and we can review this and get their feedback as the people who created this document.
That might be a nice way of sort of transitioning from the last one to the new one, because we'll have a list of things from our 130-page report, but if there are important things that weren't gotten to from the first one, we'd want to make sure we address those.
It might be good to hear, I mean, I know the meeting is public and the video is available publicly. It might be good to shoot them an email, hey, at this meeting, just, we discussed our progress, on the strategic plan. We know you worked hard on the committee, we know here's the link in the video, in case you're interested to see what was discussed.
That's a great idea.
And many of them are eligible to come and speak at public comment at any meeting. In fact, we would welcome that.
I mean, that's...
So that is my report. I guess the one thing I can say that is positive about the strategic plan is there's much less items left to do in years 4 and years 5. As I think you can get a sense, year 4, which is this upcoming year, is going to be really heavy with the district review. So having fewer items to work on will definitely be more advantage. That's my report.
Any other questions or comments for John?
We had talked about your potential retirement depending on a certain law that had passed or didn't pass. Did that law pass?
Just for the public, there's a piece of legislation that has gone through a couple of times regarding MTRS. There are a group of educators who are not involved in Retirement Plus. I'm one of those educators. As it stands right now, my retirement date would be no time soon. If that law were to pass, it would get a little bit closer, but still would be many years away. That didn't pass the last thing. It may come up again in this next legislative round, so I will keep the school committee aware of that. In any case, it would not come into play during the 4-year contract that you just approved and that I've worked, 9 days off of at this point?
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
So I'm to ask, because we have a lot of older men on this committee, if after every 90 minutes we have a 5-minute break, because I hate to be rude or miss something and then come back and get lost. So I don't know if everybody could agree on that. It's almost hitting on 2 hours and 45 minutes now. So we do that going forward, just make it 90 minutes, just have a 5-minute break quickly going forward.
I think that's a reasonable question.
Do we need a motion, or that's up to the chair to decide?
It's up to the committee, so there's no vote, but we can, honestly, we can pause it on the agenda, so not a problem. But yeah, it's a committee decision, not my decision. Okay, so our next meeting is Thursday, August 31st. We do have a need for executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, see Chapter 30A, Section 21A, free to discuss strategies with respect to collective bargaining with HWEA or litigation if no meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body in the church affairs. HWEA Unit A, C, contracts, Master General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 3, to discuss strategy with respect to the litigations of the open meeting may have detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. J. Usher, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law, specifically Master General Law, Chapter 214, Section 1B, Massachusetts Students' Records Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 34D, Massachusetts Student Records Regulations 603, CMR 23 ex Quentia, and Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act FERPA 20 U.S.C. Section 1232G and 34 CFR Part 99 regarding student transfer requests.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we will be adjourning from regular session during executive session, so we will not be returning. We'll do a roll call to executive session. Cheryl Farrell. Aye. Tim Collins.
Yes.
Sean Kennedy.
Aye.
Lisa Murray.
Yes.
Rich Rediker.
Aye.
Mike Terabasi.
Yep.
And Michelle Boudreau. Aye. We're now adjourned to executive session, 8:10.
Here, something else.